Drivetime on RTE Radio 1, sponsored by Ulster Bank. No matter what business you're in, make our business banking team yours. Ulster Bank Ireland TAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Now, the United States has accused Russia and Syria of trying to sanitise the scene of a suspected chemical weapons attack in Douma. But with President Trump determined to withdraw US troops from Syria and the rebel province of Eastern Ghouta now back under government control, is Syrian President Assad now on the eve of victory in the country's 8-year civil war? For more on this, I'm joined by the British-born Syrian journalist Danny Makki, who has spent the past 2 months in Syria, much of it in the contested territory of Eastern Ghouta. And talking about Eastern Ghouta, Danny, how important is control of this area to the overall outcome now of this Syrian war?
Well, it's probably the single largest strategic victory since the start of the crisis in 2011. Eastern Ghouta is a huge mass of territory which is on the eastern side of Damascus, so essentially creating this security arc around the capital. Now, its importance isn't just because it's so close to the capital, but because it's a main source of mortar attacks, which can hit almost every area of the capital. So from that perspective, it's very important for the Syrian government and Assad that it's been retaken. And second of all, it's an area where the Syrian army literally struggled to retake for the previous 7 years. You know, if it wasn't for this huge offensive and this huge wave of Russian airstrikes in Eastern Ghouta, and the fact that they attacked these areas from the lines further backwards, as opposed to the front lines around Damascus, it would have never been taken. I mean, I was there very recently, just a couple of days ago, and some of the defences in Jobar and Harasta and other areas were almost impregnable to penetrate. It took literally years to build those types of systems with tunnels, and the army really struggled with it. So from that viewpoint, it's a very important victory for the Assad regime. And since then, they've been on a war path, they've been on a victory march, and they've taken back areas of eastern Qalamun as well. And it looks like the centre of the country is going to be retaken almost totally. Whereas you have now the main struggles in this conflict, it's going to be a war of peripheries. You're going to get the border areas are going to be areas where there's going to be more conflict, more escalation, and the majority of the fighting is going to be left to the areas on the outskirts of central Syria, east, west, south, and north, rather than locations and enclaves within the cities itself.
And Danny, is one of the peripheries you're talking about, is this Idlib, where we read that many of those out of Douma after that chemical attack, that they fled to Idlib because there are fears that people are being funneled into this area and Idlib could become the next target for Assad?
Well, Idlib really is now the most significant area under the control of the rebels, but Assad's not going to attack Idlib right now. There's a few other targets which are probably first on the list. One of those would be Daraa, the other one would be areas around Aleppo. Idlib wouldn't be attacked primarily because it's an area where almost all of the rebels are now located, and they're actually fighting each other. So you've got Al-Qaeda, otherwise known as Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, and now fighting other rebel groups. So Assad's just going to watch by while all of these rebels try to kill each other. And then when the time is right, he'll attack Idlib, no doubt about it. I mean, Idlib is the last big battle in Syria. It's going to be the conclusion, on what happens there, and the West's reaction to Idlib with the reaction of Turkey, which is obviously bordering northern Syria and Idlib, is going to be crucial to define exactly what course this war is going to take. The Assad victory is clear. Everyone can see it, and it's been coming since the Russian intervention. But that victory comes with a lot of complexities. It comes with what you could say complications, because there are foreign powers within Syria. You've got US troops. We understand Trump has stated his intent to leave, but those troops are present for the time being in Tenis, in southeastern Syria in the desert, and in northeastern Syria as well. You've got the SDS. You've got two different Turkish-led forces, Operation Olive Branch and Operation Euphrates Shield. Now, both of them have tens of thousands of troops. So what will happen with that? They've recently taken Afrin. They seem to be on a collision course with Syrian government forces. And this is where the role of Russia and the United States comes in, to actually keep all of these actors in check in Syria at the moment. And Assad definitely does not have the manpower to take on the Turks or even the US for that matter at the moment. So from their perspective, from their viewpoint, it's just consolidating whatever they have after retaking Eastern Ghouta and Eastern Qalamun, perhaps going south towards Deraa and finishing one of the border areas before going towards Idlib.
And isn't there a suggestion that if the US troops are pulled out, they could be replaced by an Arab ally, an unspecified Arab ally, maybe Egypt, maybe Saudi Arabia? And I wonder what impact that might have.
I mean, that particular strand of information has been dealt with within Syria in the state media while I was still there. It's been dealt with as a joke, essentially, because you'd have this situation where the US forces were protected by an air force, protected by their huge military. And Syrian forces wouldn't dare go near the sphere of influence of US forces. They did once in Deir ez-Zor, and the casualty list was significant. So if US forces are replaced with Saudi Arabian troops, and you've got Iranian-backed militias in that same area, near the same location, just maybe 5 or 6 kilometers away at the best of times, you're going to get a full-scale attack on these forces the second they get in, if there's no US forces there with them. There'd be no better example of Iran tackling and challenging Saudi Arabia than attempting to target Saudi Arabian forces if they were in Syria. And that's the big threat, because you can't bring in, if you're Saudi Arabia, it's almost impossible to bring in a force into Syria which is unprotected without US and Western support, because they'd be sitting ducks, essentially, to what is essentially a very large, very well-trained, very well-equipped Iranian-backed militia force in the northeast of Syria, which at times can reach 15 to 20,000 forces. So you have a considerable amount of militants and pro-government forces in that area. And Iran has no doubt bolstered and boosted these troops recently with more weapons, more ammunition, more missiles. So definitely, I believe that the northeast of Syria is going towards some sort of collision course, and that could be triggered if US troops want to withdraw and Arab forces come in.
Danny Makki, thank you very much for your analysis this evening, coming up to 29 minutes past 5 o'clock.